thank you very much for being here with us. It's an extreme honor and a wonderful opportunity because Their Finest is a wonderful film. I just want to say we have Their Finest half hour to talk about the film and your career. You can ask your questions. And I just wanted to open up the discussion a bit because this wonderful film, Their Finest, is a combination of on so many levels of wonderful elements, combining drama, film in film. It's a film about propaganda. It's a wonderful actor's piece. It's a wonderful comedy. And it has an eccentric star at the very core. So I would like to ask Bill Nighy in the first place, really.
Who is that?
So how long did you hesitate to take on the role?
It took me about 5 seconds to say yes. I don't think it took me 5 seconds. The script was terrific. The part was obviously great. I also get to play drunken Uncle Frank as well. So everything about it was attractive. And also I knew that Stephen was involved, and I knew that Lona Scherfig was going to direct it, who I'd tried to work with a couple of times before, and so it was a killer combination, and I adored making the movie, and that's not PR.
A question to Stephen Woolley. This wonderful piece, it's quite difficult to find this equilibrium that this film so wonderfully has now between all these elements that I mentioned. And would you say it's too much to say that Bill Nighy is the element in his acting to combine the drama and the comedy at the same time?
Well, it was very important for us to have an element of humor in the film because, you know, the perspective of the movie is from a female perspective rather than a male perspective. And I think for Lona directing the film and Gabby writing the film and Lissa's novel, gives a very unique view of that period, and that's why I think the film was quite modern. But it was also important for us to have a strong element of what was going on in the world of cinema and drama at the time. Somebody who, Bill's character Ambrose personifies the different world that existed from the silent cinema that went into the 30s, where actors were able to play parts that were much younger than them, and cinema was just growing up. You know, silent movies only ended in 1928, 1929, so it had only been 9 years of movies being spoken. And cinema in Britain, as opposed to Germany, where there was fantastic films being made in the 30s, cinema in Britain was not as good, let's face it. So filmmakers hadn't really discovered the art of cinema, and certainly at that time, you know, we were looking at actors of Bill's character, Ambrose's stature of yearning back to those days when there was the silent movies and when there were matinee idols. So we were very, very fortunate in getting somebody as talented as Bill to play a character that was so unlike himself. And we needed an actor who really could understand and assimilate that kind of character, because it symbolized really the whole transition from one particular kind of movie to another.
You mentioned Lone Scherfig, and she gave you wonderful scenes that have a lot of dialogue and wonderful scenes that practically don't have a dialogue. It's about your eyebrows being, for example, you know, cared for, and Uncle Frank has to have like eyebrows that are quite messy, and that's just half a line. So please tell us about you being directed by Lone Scherfig, because it looks actually like a lot of fun.
I hate my eyebrows. Truly, I have great problems with my eyebrows. It was wonderful. Lona Scherfig is a sensational human being and a fabulous filmmaker, and she laughs at my jokes, which is really all I require from a director. No, it's not true. She's much smarter than I am, and she was brave in her suggestions to me, and she gave me, every day she would give me some great gift of an idea, either to be amusing or to tell the story better. And I am hoping, in fact, I am sure that we will make another film, she and I, next year. If I had to go to work every day and it was with Lona Scherfig, I would be very happy.
the first choice. The first choice when you were young, right after school, the choice was to become a journalist. That's what I read up. And then you decided at some point to become afterwards an actor. And I would like to talk to you about this very specific moment. It interests me very, very much because what I also read is the qualification wasn't there for becoming a journalist right after school. So tell us about when this moment came that acting came into your life.
Well, I flunked school because I ran away before the exams. I ran away to the south of France, and I flunked being a journalist. Yeah, sure, because I flunked school, and you needed 5 in my country what you call O levels. I had none, and I went to the Ernest Hemingway was my hero, and he'd worked on the Toronto Star at the age of 17, and I was just determined to do everything that he'd done. So I went to the Croydon Advertiser, which is not the Toronto Star, and they said you haven't got the levels, you haven't got the O levels. So I had a very romantic idea of being a journalist. I thought I'd get a very good coat, a good hat. I'd be in Yugoslavia. Shows you how old I am. It would be raining. There would be a beautiful girl, and I would win her by writing killer sentences. That was the entire plan. And then I did meet a girl for real who briefly selected me out of the crowd. And because she was the first girl who'd ever paid any attention to me, I overreacted catastrophically. And she said, "You could be an actor." And she could have said astronaut, and I'd have given it a shot. She wrote the letter to the drama school, and that's how I became. And then she got married to a sociologist from Leeds. I know. Tell me about it.
I wondered if because you play these extremely cool roles and get a lot of comedy often enough out of it. Do you ever felt, or when did you lose your stage fright, or is stage fright still an element of acting for you?
Oh, it's a big part of my work. Stage fright. I mean, what you call stage fright. I have to touch something here. I'll touch my head. Stage fright. I mean, to be alarmed about acting is sensible. To be, you can't stop being self-conscious as a human being. So there are degrees of alarm about my job. And if you are on stage, it's very, opening plays is a traumatic experience. There's no other way around it. On film sets, beginning jobs is tough. What was your question?
I move on to another one.
Okay.
Because this film could be called also a combination of scenes you are stealing constantly. So please tell us about the art of scene stealing, how you take it away.
I'm a little uneasy about the phrase scene stealing.
Okay.
Only because it suggests that I steal. I'm not, I have a very good role, and I have I have a very good part. And I just try and do it as best I can. I understand what you mean, and I am flattered and I am complimented. But it's not. My intention is not to come on and steal the scene from someone else. You know what I mean? It's not that. If in this particular case, I just have a very good part. But so that's all I can tell you.
It's a fantastic part, and just to get a bit more precise, your first scene, if I recall the line right, is, "I will be in the dressing room if anybody needs me or anyone needs me," and this shows the whole character just in one line. So that's what brought me to this very compact scenes that bring Ambrose Lilliard to life immediately.
Yeah, the writing is very, very good. I love that line because it's a famous it's a famous idea. There are various ways of expressing it, but, you know, if you need me, I'll be in my trailer. It's kind of funny, you know, it's a stupid thing to say. I mean, he's a pompous, you know, Stephen's heard me say this 95 times. They were looking for somebody to play a chronically self-absorbed, pompous actor, and they in his declining years, and they came to me. But that's a very good line, and it's a sort of, I know a man who once stormed out of a room saying a line like that and slammed the door behind him, and the two men that were with him, one of them said, "We must go after him, he's upset," and the other man said, "Don't worry, leave him." He said, "No, it's late in the night, we must go and find him." He said, "No, don't worry." He said, "How can you be sure?" He said, "He's just walked into a cupboard." That's nothing to do with anything. And then he had to come out the cupboard and look sheepish. That's nothing to do with the movie. But...
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to open up to you as we're a bit pressed, but of course this is also for your questions to Bill Nighy and Stephen Woolley. Please, 1, 2, and 3, please. I will repeat it. I will repeat it.
I'm a very big fan of your talent. I know you played in National Theatre as well as on Broadway. You play in theatres a lot and you film as well. What is the role you are very much wanting to play? What is the role you're very much looking to play? What is more important for you? Playing on stage or filming? Which role are you willing to play?
Okay. You're at home on the stages of the world and also in film. What is the role that you really would like to play? And what would you prefer, the world of stage or the world of film?
I'd really like to have superpowers. I think it's time, before I die, I want to be able to appear suddenly in distant places and be immensely strong and be able to kill dozens of people by winking at them. I'm not even kidding. But between the stage and the screen, it's very difficult to say because they are so different. I grew up in the theatre. I've always done plays at some point. I don't think there's a version of my life where I don't. Every time I do a play, I say, this is the last time this ever happens to me. But, you know, it's probably like childbirth. You forget. I don't know. I'm just checking. So to make a choice is difficult for me. They are very different, and I love them both in their I sort of love them both. I don't love them, that's not true. But anyway, that's it.
That was the second question, please.
Yeah. Hello. First off, you were in one of my favorite duet episodes, and it's kind of related to that. You seem to always play characters who give the projects in a certain gravitas. So you deliver a speech to a Vincent van Gogh and everybody thinks, yeah, it happens. You show up in Sean's bed and everybody takes this movie now serious. Do you do this? Do you want to do this, or is it just
Well, definitely, I can say. but this is about the gravitas of the on-screen appearance. Maybe you would like to comment on it, to paraphrase.
I have no experience of that because I don't. You know, I am grateful that you should say such a thing, but I have no idea of that personally. I don't feel I have any. I don't think anyone. I don't know about gravitas, you know what I mean? I'm pleased that you should think that, but I don't turn on the gravitas, you know what I mean? I don't, you know what I mean? I don't. I just turn up feeling usually pretty insecure, pretty embarrassed, thinking I'm wearing the wrong tie, hoping I can remember my life. I'm not being coy, I'm not being modest, this is for real. So the fact that I should be mistaken for somebody with gravitas is a wonderful thing. Thank you.
Of all the great parts you played, which is your favourite?
I've been very, very fortunate. I was very happy being a vampire. I was... Thank you. I was very happy as a squid. You don't have to clap, everyone. And I'm very, this is a very, very good part. This is easily, this film, and I'm not saying this because Stephen is there or because you're here for this film is without question one of the greatest things I've ever been involved in. I mean, I know that from all the elements. And well, thank you. And I've been a zombie.
Over there, please.
I would like to know, how was your experience working on the movie Operation Valkyrie?
Operation Valkyrie, how was the experience there by Bryan Singer?
I had a very good time, actually. I had a wonderful time working on that movie with Tom Cruise, who was a wonderful man and a Democrat and very charming and great colleague, and a wonderful time in Berlin, and with a great bunch of actors. It was a big experience for me, particularly observing Tom Cruise, because he was so exemplary in his conduct and in his behavior and in the way that he was the head of the studio, not that you'd have known that, and he was the leading man, obviously, and he was an example of how that should be expressed on a film set.
Let's come back to the Marvels, Their Finest. There's a connection that just came to me after seeing Love Actually and Their Finest back to back. You tricked us into believing that as a rock singer you had a broken voice, while we see in Their Finest this marvelous singing scene of a Scottish folk anthem.
Well, yeah, when I was playing in a rock and roll film called Still Crazy many years ago, the first time I ever had to sing, I was sent to a singing teacher in Cricklewood. And she said, you must give up smoking and drinking before the session, and you must not have sex or any kind of great physical that was easy. I was not having sex anyway. And you must look after yourself and be healthy before you go into the studio to sing. And then I went to the studio where the rock and roll guys were, and they said, you must smoke as much as you possibly can. Have a lot of sex, preferably before the recording, and drink yourself stupid. And so I gave up smoking and slept with my singing teacher. I actually said that in public once, and she was absolutely appalled. So it's not true, I didn't sleep with my singing teacher.
Please.
Hi, Bill. Yoko from Hollywood Foreign Press.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, hi.
I enjoy all of your movies, but The Pride, the movie you played, compassionate person for gay people, and now, yesterday, Germany approved same-sex marriage. So I'd like to know your feelings.
I rejoiced when I saw it in the English newspaper this morning, as I do with any development in that area. I grew up, when I first became an actor, you could go to jail for 7 years in England, in Great Britain, for any public display of affection between the same sex. And now I can stand in Islington Town Hall in London and watch two of my friends, my male friends, get married and say, I love you. I find it unbearably moving. I think it's one of the... I think it's a great measure of civilization. I think it's to say it's progressive is kind of not quite correct, because it should always be like that, And, but anyway, I rejoice that Germany has made that decision. I salute you.
Other questions? If not, I wanted to ask you about a changing landscape that you have recently seen, of course, in Britain. That means on the political landscape, but that also has an effect on you, probably, as artists. Stephen, you produced from the 80s so many seminal films within the British landscape, among them all the films of Neil Jordan, Company of Wolves, The Crying Game, of course, and so many more, Interview with a Vampire. So I would like, if you could comment on how you feel today about British filmmaking in this very specific moment.
Firstly, I just want to thank everyone for speaking English. I feel it's fantastic you allow us to speak in our language, and you seem to understand everything Bill says. I don't know if that's just his body language or just because you're all like what we're not, which is bilingual. But thank you very, very much for that. It's a question often asked about the British film industry. Since I've been making films, as you said, in 1983 was my first movie, and I've made with films with studios and without studios, and low budget and high budget films. I seem to keep making movies with my producing partner Elizabeth and with Amanda on this particular film. I think there's always room for cinema, and as you can see from your wonderful festival, and you're showing so many great movies here. Cinema still seems to be breathing in terms of it being a big event. I mean, making this film was a particular pleasure because it was about cinema, which is something that's always been my life. Obviously, things are changing rapidly, and people are watching entertainment in all sorts of forms, and downloading and portable phones and everything else. So it's, it is difficult to imagine that in the next 10 or 20 years that cinema as we know it will exist in the kind of films I usually make, which are independent films or films with some significance in terms of having some political agenda is too heavy a word, but being a little bit more subversive. One thinks that my generation, or the generation both above and just below me, still enjoy movies, still enjoy this experience of being in a group of strangers watching something, enjoying it together, not enjoying it solely. And I hope that films like their finest will still be shown and still be made. The economics of cinema is something that is worrying, because if just Marvel Comics films get made, and I'm desperate to see Bill's Marvel Comics movie where he plays a superhero, but if just those films, as long as he makes other movies as well, that's fine. But if those are the kind of films that get made, and the films that are made for that particular audience, then it's very, very sad. But there seems at the moment that we are making cinema in the UK. There's a great movie here, Lady Macbeth, that you're showing, which was made for a very small budget, which is a terrific piece of cinema. There are higher budget films being made in the UK, which are also equally exciting. I think that there is still hope. I feel that there is opportunities to make alternative drama, but one has to say that television is when I first started making films, 30 years ago, a lot of the films I made wouldn't be able to be shown on TV. And now television is so mature in terms of the ideas, in terms of the censorship, political censorship. Everything has now changed around, and television is terrific. So it's changing. It's evolving all the time. I'm just hoping that we can still keep making interesting movies that people want to see on a big screen. It's important. This film was a very important film for us because we used a lot of different techniques. There's 6 or 7 different types of stock we use. You see 60mm film, you see black and white film, you see Technicolor film, you see the contemporary film. And Lona Sheffick and Sebastian Blenkov, our cameraman, worked very hard to show kind of different phases of film texturally. And in a way, that's another way of saying thank you to cinema.
Absolutely.
And I hope that we will still continue, but we are still surviving.
Mm-hmm. Bill Nighy, would you also like to comment about British cinema right now in this very specific moment?
No.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Stephen Woolley, Bill Nighy, thank you for being here.